We are live. Welcome. I am Reverend Valerie Love. If we have never met before, author of 25 books on practical spirituality and witchcraft, magic, the occult, and especially Christian witchcraft, especially the Christian Witchcraft Starter Kit. I'm having a crisis of faith, family. I have to tell you, I have to be honest with you, and I have to tell you what's going on. And I'm telling you, I have been in an inner introspection and inner combing of consciousness and inner examination and inner, well, let me tell you what started it. Here's what started it. So I'm always reading books on the origins of Christianity, Christianity and its relationship to paganism, which we know Christianity and paganism. Christianity was born out of paganism. We'll talk about that in another conversation. I talk a lot about that on TikTok. You can catch up with Christian Witches TikTok. Hey, Danielle, how you loving? Mwah, I haven't seen you in forever. Love you, love you, love you. So with this crisis of faith, it comes on the heels of reading a book that I'm going to show you in a moment that was shocking. Now, this book is shocking not because it says something particularly that I've never heard of before. Not that. So let me tell you what the book is, and let me tell you what it says, because it's quite the read. It is quite the read. The name of the book is called Creating Christ: How Roman Emperors created Christianity. I'm going to show you. Oh my God! Hey Cyclone, I'm so happy to hear able to watch another live. Yay! We're live together. I love it. I love it. I love it. Mwah, Danielle, love you. Okay, so let me show you all this book, and let me tell you what this book says. It's mind blowing. Now, first, we have a little quiz. Put in the chat, if you're watching on a replay or watching live, put in the chat the earliest Christian symbol. Okay? What was the symbol for Christianity? So put it in the chat. Okay? If you say it was a cross, if you think it was something else, whatever you know to be like the original, go all the way back to like right after Christ was crucified. What were people using? Was there a symbol? What were they using? Ooh, the golden sun. I like that. The pentacle. Okay, Pat says the cross. Wow, this is interesting. Okay, so everybody put that in the chat. And let me show you this book that has my mind like, psh. And that's not easy to do because I read a whole rack of books. I'm always studying. I'm always researching. Okay, I'm an independent researcher. Okay, here is the book I pulled up for you. The Star. One would think it's a cross, right, Danielle? I know, right? Okay, so here is the book, Creating Christ: How Roman Emperors Invented Christianity. Now, my affiliate link to buy this book is in the description box below. So if you would be so kind as to use my Amazon link to buy this book, that'd be great. You don't have to. It's up to you. It's an offering. This book by James Valiant. Here's what this book is purporting. This book is purporting that the entire New Testament was written under the aegis of the Roman Emperor Titus Flavius. Now, let me explain some more about this. The entire New Testament, you're talking about the Gospels, Paul's letters. Maybe the only one that escapes it is the book of Revelation, because the book of Revelation is just its own bizarre thing. Okay? And there was actually, when they were coming up with the Bible canon, there were actually some bishops and some church fathers, quote unquote, that were opposed to even put it in the book of Revelation, because who even knows what the book of Revelation is? Was he on an acid trip? Was he doing some shrooms? Like, what was John doing? Anyway, the book of Revelation is a conversation for another day. Constantine, not Constantine Celine, because you know why? Constantine was in the 300s. So we're talking 4th century, right? But we got to go roll it all the way back to, okay, the day after Jesus died. Okay, well, maybe not the day after he died, because the day after he died, we know the story about the body and the body not being found, and then da 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 da, and then 3 days later he raises. So let's go to 4 days later. What were they doing? What were they talking about? Who was the new leader? What did the movement look like? What were people believing, thinking? Okay, so let's go to a few proofs. Caesar's Messiah documentary talks about this. Oh my goodness, Golden Sun. Oh my goodness, Golden Sun, you're on it. Because the Flavians, Vespasian, and his son Titus, and his other son Domitian. These are all emperors. Emperor Vespasian was the one who was, involved with the whole Jerusalem, sacking of Jerusalem, the whole war, all of that. And they actually called him the second coming of Christ. Then his son Titus took over, and Titus ruled for 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days, or 2 years, 2 months, and 2 weeks, something like that. It was a 222. Titus, who, by the way, is in the Bible. Titus, once they sacked Jerusalem, he was a general. He was one of these great, great, great generals, okay? These are all Romans. Titus, after they sacked Jerusalem, killed, I think they said millions of people died in 70 CE, the War of 70 CE, Great War. Like a lot of Romans died too, and a lot of Jewish people in Jerusalem. After that, they took the rest of the people that they didn't kill to be slaves. Now think through this. Put yourself all the way back in the 1st century. This is 40 years after they crucified Christ. There's a great war. The Romans have just come in. They have just desecrated the temple, burned everything down, took the temple gold and whatnot, killed all these people. A lot of Roman soldiers died too, the legion of Roman soldiers that were in charge of, I think it was the 10th Legion or the 10th Regiment or something like that. They had regiments. The Romans were these very cruel, they put down any kind of uprising. They put it down fast and cruel, and they would just line the road with crucifixes and just nail up everybody and let the birds pluck your eyes out and stuff. Like they did that because, think about it, they didn't have police. And the Roman Empire was huge. It went from one end all the way from over, you're talking over where the Buddhists, Italy, going up a little north of that, all the way across to, you're talking about almost to Syria and down to Alexandria in Egypt. This is a vast area to police. They can't police the whole area. So what do? So people have time, they can get together and they can do uprisings. And they were ruling with so much fear. Absolutely, Celine, just fear. And I don't think a lot of Christians even look at the circumstances under which the Bible was written. And wouldn't we have to know that? We're reading a book and we want to seek to understand this book. We don't even know about Paul's life. All we know is Paul said, no fornication, no this, no that. Oh, they can quote you what Paul said, but they don't know anything about, did you research beyond that? Well, since I'm such a deep researcher and I love all this stuff, so they put down, so any Jewish revolt, because of course the Romans ruled with an iron fist. So any revolt, which they had a lot of revolts because the Jews didn't want to be ruled. What people want to be ruled with an iron fist? No one. So of course you're going to have revolts, and you're going to have these Jewish revolts. And then there was the Bar Kokhba revolt. There was lots of revolts. Well, how did the Romans deal with revolts? They would just go to the place. They would send a legion or a regiment of X amount of soldiers, and put the revolt down fast and hard and grab all the people and chop down tons of trees, make crosses, line them up on the road where people could walk by and see them, and nail them all up and say, now, anybody else ready for revolt? So it was so vicious how they operated that was enough to scare probably a lot of people, but not everybody. So when it came time, just giving you that backstory about the Romans. So after they took Jerusalem, sacked the temple, what happened to the people who survived? They took them as slaves. They had tons of slaves. So why do you think the New Testament in the Bible is so slave friendly? It speaks of slavery as a virtue. Give you an example. Slaves, listen to your masters. It says, listen to your masters, even if your masters are cruel. It says it right in the Bible. Look it up for yourself. I'll give you all the scriptures. I can put some scriptures in the description box. Well, we don't need to do that because you can just go to Bible Gateway or Bible Hub and you can just search it yourself. It says, slaves, honor your slave forward. Thank you, Danielle. It honors and condones slavery as a virtue. Why? I always wondered that. Like, I knew that in the Middle Passage, the colonizers used these. And when I say colonizers, I'm not talking about a color of people. I'm talking about a consciousness. There are people that are not of a particular color or race or creed that have a colonizer consciousness. And in Africa, you had, in many parts of Africa and different countries of Africa, you had some Africans that were enslaving other Africans. So colonizer is not a color. Colonizer is a consciousness. And there are some people now that have a colonizer consciousness still. Well, the colonizers took the slaves and then they used the Bible to perpetuate slavery and to keep the slaves in line. You need to listen to your masters. Why is the New Testament so slave? It's a good word, slave forward. Why is it saying all this stuff about slaves? Obey your masters, obey your masters, obey your master slaves. Because when it was written, they had just rounded up a whole bunch of slaves and they wanted these people to be subservient and not uprise. So they made it as a virtue. This is what your God says. This is what the new religion says. You see, here they go, making a religion from Christ, making a religion when Jesus never started a religion. He didn't start a religion. Okay, so all right, so I'm thinking about this. Wow, this is shocking. This is a little shocking. Not that we didn't hear all these stories about slave this and slave that in the Bible. We read that stuff in the Bible. And we were like, well, there were slaves in the Bible. And I guess if you want to be a good slave and be pleasing to God, you need to obey your master. No. If you're a slave, you need to get up out of there and not be a slave. You need to escape. You need to uprise. You need to not be obedient to a master because God didn't create no slaves. Humans made that shit up. And then they tried to justify it by putting it in a book and making it, God says you're a good person if you do this. Oh, that is just so conniving. That's conniving. Okay, now, let's continue. Titus Flavius. No, I'm not making this up because I just showed you the book. Yeah, I made up the history of Rome. This is the kind of ignorance that we're talking about. I made up the history of Rome. I made up that Rome sacked Jerusalem. I made that up when it's in 50 million history books. Like, go fucking read a book. Go fucking read a book. Look, bye. Because I can't take people that are just so simple and ignorant. You got to get banned because you're just too ignorant for me to even think about in this moment where we're talking about these deep things. Read a book. Look, those are the people that are going to be on the. I talk about them at Thanksgiving. They're at the kitty table. You have to give them a plastic spoon and a plastic fork and a plastic knife that don't cut shit because you can't. You're not on stake of God's word. You're in the. Bye. We having a grown folks conversation here. Y'all are grown folks. Everybody else, get the hell out. I ain't got time for these crazy Christians today. Maybe on another day when I was a little more peaceful and compassionate. I would have a minute for these crazy Christians today. Today ain't the day, crazy Christians. Get fuck off. I said it, and there ain't gonna be no ads running on none of these videos because this is not ad friendly. This is Reverend Val telling you some truth that we talking about. We talking about real crisis of faith here. Okay, so let's continue with the story. Okay, Gypsy Soul. Let's see. Gypsy Soul is a wise woman. Let's see what you saw. Oh wow, that's what I just spoke about. This didn't have something to back up what I was saying. I have to get the book. Oh my god, the book is mind blowing. Okay, let's go further. That's not all. That is not all, family. Keep putting what the symbols, the earliest symbol for Christianity, keep putting it in the chat because when I show y'all, God is my strength, my comments are slow, not catching these CC comments. Crazy Christians. You know, I'm used to crazy Christians, but sometimes I'm just, my patience ain't, I'm not a saint yet. So block, ban, bye. Okay, so it gets better. So already we're starting to see this case that there was a heavy Roman hand on the New Testament. Here's another piece of evidence. I often wondered, family, tell me if you ever wondered this in the whole story about spiritual mother, it's Bridget Harris. Yes, Bridget! Yes! Tell me if you ever had questions about this story in the Bible. Why was it that Pontius Pilate was so reluctant to kill Jesus? They painted Pontius Pilate in the Bible, in the New Testament, in the Gospels. They paint Pontius Pilate in the Gospels like he's this, oh, he was wringing his hands about killing this innocent man. His wife was having a dream, don't kill that man, he's innocent, this is a holy man. Why did they make Pontius Pilate look so good in the Bible? And who was the villain? Jewish people. I often had suspicions about that, like, why were the Jewish people painted in the Bible to be the enemies of Christ, to be the ones who were responsible for killing him? And why were they the scapegoat? They were the heavy of the Gospels. I always feel that to be a little suspicious, like all the Jewish people didn't like him. And they were screaming, don't kill Barabbas, kill Jesus. Remember, he had a choice because supposedly Pontius was like, okay, he was shuffling, how can I keep this man alive? Where if you go and look at history, Pontius Pilate is one of the most cruel people ever. He was killing people left and right. Why wouldn't he kill him? Okay, maybe it was God, God's Holy Spirit, whatever, all good. Yet, the story doesn't add up. And here's why the story doesn't add up. Hey, Fuzzy Onesie, how you loving? The reason the story doesn't add up, and please smash up the likes, smash up the shares, wherever you are watching this, please share this with people, share it with your Christian friends, share the book with your Christian friends, because I'm going to show you some evidence and some proof from this book that is incontrovertible. It just is. That's why I'm having a whole crisis of faith about the entire New Testament now. And I'm sharing it with you because this is important. This is important stuff. This is soul stuff. This is what we staked our lives on at one point when we were in the Christian faith. Okay, let's go further. Pontius Pilate, of course, was on side with Titus. Titus, by the way, is in the Bible. It's a Bible book named after Titus. I'm beginning to wonder if this Bible book is named after the Emperor Titus. Look it up. The Roman Emperor Titus is in the Bible? Yes, and here's why we know. Paul was a friend of people in high places in Rome. He was friends. Paul was a Roman citizen. It says it in the Bible. Paul was not a scrappy Galilean. Now, think about this. Jesus and his followers were scrappy Galileans. And I say scrappy because these were not people these were not the elite. These were not Sadducees and Pharisees or scribes. These were not well written people. These were not, might not have even been able to read books. Jesus might not have actually, well, Jesus could read because there's many places in the Bible where he's reading, yet he is from Galilee. Galilee is like Harlem. It's like a little hick town. It's not like Rome. It's not like Alexandria. In the ancient world, Galilee is not like. That's why people, when they were hearing it, you're from where? No, nothing comes up good out of there. It's a little hick town. No one paid attention to it. So now you are telling me that Matthew, Mark, and John, now Luke, we know Luke was not even one of the apostles. Luke came years later. You're telling me that Matthew and Mark and John, these three apostles, that they were so well learned that they could write in this very elevated Greek. When you read the original Greek manuscripts, these are some highfalutin people. These are educated people. These are people who are writing, who know prose and mythology and all of that. The reason we don't understand any of this when we're reading the Bible is because we're not reading the Bible in the original languages that the Bible was written in. If you picked up a book and one chapter read like Jay-Z's rap, and chapter 2 read like Shakespeare, and chapter 3 read like the English I'm speaking now, and chapter 4 read like the Queen's English from Great Britain, you would know that 4 different people wrote it, or either one person is writing in 4 different styles. If the AI examined it, it would say these are 4 different writers. Yet that all can happen in one book of the Bible, like Matthew, yet we're not reading the original, so they just whitewashed the whole thing, made it English, and we're just reading the English version. We think one person wrote this, or we think that the actual Matthew wrote this. The actual Matthew probably couldn't even read one letter if you put it in front of him. Maybe he could, because they say that Matthew was a tax collector. Think about it. Think about Jesus' first apostles. Weren't they fishermen? Back in the day, do we understand that everybody could not read and write? Reading and writing is a common thing now. That wasn't how it was in the ancient world 2,000 years ago. Everyone couldn't read and write. You didn't need to read and write. You were a fisherman, or you were a carpenter, or you were, by the way, he was a father. The story is that his father was a carpenter, and as a carpenter's child, he would learn a trade. And also the carpenter was highly regarded in the little town or whatever, because the carpenter could also set bones. They could cut wood and set your bones. So if you had broken bones, you would also go to the carpenter. Look it up. Don't listen to a random witch on the interwebs. Study to show thyself approved. Look it up yourself. Okay. So, Chris, oh, so you know Greek? Bye. Because it don't seem like you're here to add anything helpful to the conversation. Bye. I tell you, you caught this witch on the wrong day today. It's the day before Thanksgiving. Everybody getting fucking banned and blocked while we talk about this serious issue of crisis of faith, unless you have something intelligent and wonderful to add to the conversation, something that forwards the entire conversation. Okay. So at most, you needed to know math to do your work and collect your money. Hello, Aurora Day. Go back to that slavery rev. Woo, Aurora Day. Why do they have all that slavery in the Bible? Because the Romans were big slavers. Every time they went somewhere, if you want to go deeper, this is all publicly available information. This is all publicly available. So for anyone that wants to come from my neck, I research all the time, and I would tell you, go do your research on it. The Romans were huge slavers. Everyone knows this, because the Romans, whenever they went and conquered someplace, the people that they didn't kill, they would take the rest of them as slaves. The Romans had houseboys, house servants. And as a matter of fact, if you look up the Roman celebration of Saturnalia, which happened once a year, that was the year that they exchanged places, that the slave could tell their masters what to do for one day. It was a slave day. Yay, let's let the slaves tell us what to do. Otherwise, they was doing whatever they wanted to them slaves. As a matter of fact, they would have houseboys. The Romans, they would have houseboys, and they would do you know what to the houseboys. I can't even say it on this video. Okay, so Paula, I'm so happy. Love your knowledge. I'm so happy because we've got to know this, family. We've got to study to show ourselves approved. We cannot be like these dumbass Christians out here that only believe the apologetics. They only believe what they've been told. They will never pick up a book like the book I'm recommending to you. Read this book. I'm telling you, after this book, I'm having a crisis of faith. Creating Christ, How Roman Emperors Invented Christianity by James Valiant. I gave the book 5 stars. It's got 400 ratings. This is not a book. This is 30 years of research. This is not a book written by some, and just, I feel like writing a book, so I'm just going to write a bunch of stuff in a book. No. This is a book with 30 years of research. Things that they were talking about in this book, I have been scratching my head about with Christianity for a very long time. Let's go to the original symbol. They replaced houseboys with altar boys. Look at that, golden sun. That's exactly what they did. And still doing the same thing to them. Because the Holy Roman Empire, I was just there in summertime for our retreat in Italy. We go to the Vatican when we go to Italy. That's the Holy Roman Empire. You're in a different country. You're no longer in Italy. They have their own country. When you cross the line, it tells you when you're walking on maps, you are going to cross an international border. When you walk right here, you're out of Vatican City. Right here, you're inside of Vatican City. They have their own police, and the police can't even come into Vatican City. What are they hiding in there? Listen to Billy Carson. He'll tell you all the things that are hidden underneath Vatican City. Oh my God. Now let's go to the earliest Christian symbol. Who thinks the Christian symbol is a cross? That's what they told us. That's what they told us. They told us the Christian symbol is a cross. No, it was not. The Christian symbol. Are you ready for this, family? I mean, this thing almost had my head explode. The original Christian symbol was an anchor with a dolphin or with 2 fish. I'll tell you what it means. Now, how do we know? How do we know this was the original Christian symbol? Before the cross. Because we'll tell you in a moment when the cross came in. Before the cross. Before the fish. Remember the fish? I thought someone would mention the fish. Remember the fish? I'm going to tell you something else about this original Christian symbol. Oh my. Universal Church Unite. You making me question my entire life. That's me right now. Thank you. I was like, I got to talk to my peeps about this because this thing, it will reconfigure your whole consciousness. Now, I'm not even done yet. Wait till we get into this, okay? God is my strength. What do these Christians, they think the Council of Nicaea was? The Council of Nicaea, they totally made up religion. They totally made up the Christian faith. Okay, they made up the Trinity. They made up all of that. They made it all up. That's why you can't understand it. When they tell you why you don't understand it, you ask too many questions, they say it's mystery. Oh, okay. Okay, you don't know. Just say, we don't know how this works. Because we were arguing, actually, because some of the bishops thought he's not God. And some thought he is God. And some thought, but how can he be God? But then what about the Holy Spirit? Is the Holy Spirit God too? They went in the room arguing. And then they said, how about we just make them all God? But then they're not God. But then God is still God. But Jesus, he's kind of God, but he's kind of not. He can't be the God, but he's still kind of God. Okay, everybody's happy. What are we going to call it? Well, no, it's 3 in 1. Let's do what the pagans do. The pagans have 3 for everything. Let's just take their shit because we've been taking their shit forever. Why not? Just co-opt the pagan shit because we love stealing stuff from people. We stole a whole holy book from the Jews. We stole all our practices from the pagans. Let's just keep our stealing going. God, these Romans. Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay, so let's continue. Okay, let's continue. The ankh is the womb, and the penis symbolizing harmony between men and women. That's exactly right. Okay, Daniel. Oh, I forgot about the fish. Yes, remember the fish? Okay. Why the anchor and the dolphin? This is gonna blow your mind. Who was the dolphin closely associated with? Apollo. Baby, connect the dots. Apollo. Yeah, the god. Yeah, the god Apollo. The first Christian symbol was an anchor. I'm going to show it to you in a minute with a dolphin wrapped around it. Let's look at it right now. Baby, man, how much stuff did they hide from us? How much stuff did they hide from us? But guess what? You can't hide truth forever. It's going to come out. Greatest story ever sold. That's right. Murdoch, oh my God, he wrote the most amazing books. All right, let's go to the original Christian symbol. Get this book, family. The link is in the description box below. I mean, if you read this book will explode your whole head. It will shift all your paradigms. I'm telling you, ever since I finished this book, I've been having a crisis of faith. I have to reconfigure my whole consciousness. Okay, let's go to, just Google it, anchor and dolphin symbol. Just Google it. Boom. The anchor and dolphin symbol dolphin mark symbolizes the phrase, Latin from make haste slowly or hasten slowly. The Roman Emperor Augustus often chided his military commanders to hasten slowly. Okay, so the anchor with the dolphin has been found on the coins of Titus Flavius, on Titus coins. Okay, let's look at the images. Boom. Okay. Titus and the dolphin with the anchor. Okay. Anchor and dolphin symbol, early Christianity. Let's follow this symbol. Boom. Here is the earliest symbols for Christianity. It was not a cross. It was not a fish. It was a dolphin with a anchor. Where did they find it? And sometimes it appeared like this, a dolphin with two fish. Do you see the little cross there? This was actually an anchor with two fish. Do you see this little cross here? It's an anchor. Do you see the anchor down here? It looks like a cross up here. This is an anchor. Do you see that this is an anchor? It was an anchor. Do you see this right here? This is an anchor. Up here looks like a cross. See, they just cut this part off. Up here looks like a cross. Down here is an anchor. Does everyone see this? Please put in the chat that you see what I'm talking about. Please put it in the chat that you see the dolphin and the anchor, and then we go into what the dolphin and the anchor actually means. Why so many references to the anchor in the Bible? Anchor your faith, the anchor of faith. Okay, you see it, you see it, you see it, you see it. Where did they find this dolphin and anchor? Like, how do we know? Like, we need proof, we need evidence. We can't just go by what people say. In the earliest catacombs, where the earliest Christians lived, Christians that go all the way back to the 1st century, on their tombs is not a cross and not a fish. It's a dolphin with an anchor. Or sometimes an anchor with two fish. That was the earliest Christian symbol of the Christian faith. The exact same symbol that Titus Flavius put. He's one of the Flavians from his father Vespasian. His Vespasian was the father. He had two sons. One son was Titus, the other son was Domitian, Emperor Domitian. Look him up. I didn't make up the Emperor Titus. Titus minted a coin at the same time that the New Testament was being written, at the same time that Paul was hanging out with the emperor and these other people, at the same time that Jerusalem was sacked and they took all these slaves. All of this was happening at the same time. If you look at the timeline, and who possibly wrote the Gospels, because they wrote them very pro-Roman. Pay your taxes, give unto Caesar the things of Caesar. Jesus said of this particular Roman centurion, not in all of Israel have I found someone with faith like this. He was talking about a Roman centurion. He elevated, supposedly, I think these are words they put in Jesus' mouth, which there are a lot of words that people put in Jesus' mouth. You got to go back. You got to really bring in non-commodity library. You have to really bring in Gospel of Thomas and some of these older texts that haven't been tampered with and fooled with and messed with and kind of put into the Christian religion. You got to go get those older texts so that you can really start to understand what was Jesus really teaching. When you look at the fact that Jesus stated that no one in Israel had the faith of a Roman centurion, he elevated a Roman centurion above everyone who was Jewish, who was of the Hebrew faith. Everyone. Not in all Israel is there someone like you, Roman centurion. If that's not an openly lavish Roman embellishment of the Romans, I don't know what is. Pontius Pilate embellished. He's so wonderful. He wanted to save him, but no, you mean Jews killed him. Has fomented, by the way, anti-Semitic hatred from Christians. I was brought up that the Jews were the bad guys. They were the ones who killed Jesus. Now, it doesn't add up. And here's why it doesn't add up. Why didn't the Jews just kill him? If the Jews wanted Jesus dead, why didn't they just kill him? Supposedly, this is what the Christians told us. Supposedly, the Jews did not have the authority to kill Jesus, so they had to beef up the charges. Now, in the Torah, not in the Torah, I think it's in the Mishnah or in the Talmud, it said that Jesus was a sorcerer who incited people to worship gods, not God. Gods. Oh, that's interesting because that's us pagans. We over here with all our gods and goddesses. It said he incited people to worship gods, not one. And he was a sorcerer. Now that's right. That's what the Jewish people said. They wrote it in their own books. They said he was a sorcerer. Same thing I said. He was a magician, sorcerer. He was a necromancer. He was a witch. He was all of that. But people don't want to see it. Even the Jewish people said it. Well, they claim that the Jews could not kill him because they did not have the legal authority or precedent to kill someone. That's not true. Why? Because the Romans acknowledged that the Jewish people had a law and that their law governed how they lived, how they ate. It was part of the problem between the Romans and the Jewish people because Romans didn't like people that didn't blend in. Come on, y'all, blend in so we can all get along, so we can get back to our rabble-rousing and carousing and orgies and chopping off heads like John the Baptist and drinking and our sexing everybody. Come on, stop. Can't we all get along? That was what the Romans really wanted. But the Jews weren't having that. Jews weren't just meshing in with everyone else because they had to have their holy ways of eating. They had to have their holy ways of worshiping. They did not have adultery. You could not use, let me put you on screen share again. If you were a Jewish person in the first century, you could not have used, let's go back to Titus's coin, anchor and dolphin, Titus coin. If you were a Jewish person, you would not have been able to use this coin right here to purchase, when you go to the temple, to purchase a dove or some offering that you had to make at the temple to atone for some kind of sins. You would not be able to buy it with this coin because this coin had on it, this is considered idolatry. It has on it the likeness of an animal, and it has on it the likeness of a Caesar, or an emperor, and that would be considered idolatry. So you could not take not even the Roman money and buy a dove if you were a Jewish person in the first century to atone for your sins at the temple in Jerusalem. You had to change your money. That's who the money changers were. Did you ever wonder who the money changers were in the temple that Jesus ran out of there? Who were the money changers? They were the people who would change the Roman coins that the Jewish people could not use to purchase. They could use them maybe to buy some bread. You couldn't use it in the temple for something holy. You couldn't use it to buy a sacrifice. So they had to change the Roman money to an acceptable coin that they could then use to buy the sacrifice. Look this up. I'm telling you, look it all up. It's all in books. It's all in books. Matter of fact, it's even easier than that. It's on YouTube. Right? So I'm not saying anything revolutionary here. There's nothing here that's shocking. There's nothing here that's not in 50 million books. There's nothing here that scholars don't already know. I'm probably not even saying anything that your pastor doesn't already know. Them pastors knew it because they went to Bible seminary. These pastors found these things out, with a lot of them, when they were in Bible seminary, and they were like, well, I could never tell that to my church because they just wouldn't go for that. So let's just go with the regular Jesus story. And they just keep perpetrating the fraud. Okay, so now we see the link. Okay, let's put together the chain of events. The Romans in charge. Paul is real friendly with them. Jesus is friendly with them, but Jesus hates the Jewish people, and the Romans hate the Jewish people. Interesting. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Okay, Paul hung out with a whole lot of highfalutin Roman people, including Titus, who's in the Bible. Paul was a Roman citizen. I think Paul was a psyop for the Roman government. I know this sounds like conspiracy theory, so that he could write books that they would make be the Bible. Because see, Paul was writing before the Gospels. Paul really should be before the Gospels if you put all the Gospels in timeline. And if you put the entire New Testament in timeline, Paul's writing, I think Galatians may be one of the first ones. Don't quote me on that one. One of Paul's writings is the very first New Testament writing that we have. And at the same time, Paul is hanging out with Titus and the Flavians. Paul is hanging out with other highfalutin Roman people that are in the Bible, like Dorcas, Roman citizens that have converted to Christianity, kind of. And they all got their slaves, and they need these slaves not to uprise. You see, if you look at Paul's writings, I never thought Paul's writings matched Jesus. I keep saying on TikTok, Jesus and Paul were teaching two different things. And then we're about to wrap this up in a minute. They railroaded Jesus because he called out their sins. So I never thought that Paul and Jesus were on the same page. They're not on the same page. When you read Paul and then you read, the basic tenets of Paul and what Paul was promoting and promulgating, It even said in the Bible that he had a fight with Jesus' brother, James, who took over the movement after Jesus was killed. James was pretty much head honcho in charge. And James, they called him James the Just. And they said this man had calluses on his knees because he was so holy, because he was praying all the time. He was on his knees all the time praying. That's why they called him James the Just. They killed the man, threw him off the Temple Mount, and killed him before the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem. They killed him. He's a martyr. So, and before they killed him, James and Paul had a falling out. And Peter and Paul had a falling out. It's in the Bible. And why did they have a falling out? They had a falling out because James and Peter were Jewish people practicing Jewish law. Paul was not. He was a Sadducee, yet he was saying, everybody can be for this new Jesus guy. Everybody, you don't have to convert to Judaism to be with this Jesus guy. And James and Peter were like, no, people need to eat different. People need to change their minds. People need to, no, they were still on the law. Paul was not. Why? Because Paul was a psyop for the Roman government. So he wanted everybody to come in. And guess what? If you told grown men that they all had to get circumcised to become Christians, they were like, we're not doing that. So he was like, okay, you don't have to get circumcised. Well, you have to give up your rebel rousing and your whoring and your being with all these women and all your drinking, and you got to give up eating your pork and your pigs, and you got to eat that. They were like, whoa, this is too much. The Romans weren't doing that. So Paul had to come up with something. I think Paul, Titus Flavius, and Josephus, who is a historian from the first century, who was there when they sacked Jerusalem, and then they took him, and the Romans said, we'll pay you to write the history. Well, if you're paying somebody to write the history, are they going to write a history that makes you look like the bad guy? Of course not. They're going to write a history that makes you look great. And that's what Josephus did. Josephus was a Jew. And a lot of Jews didn't like Josephus because supposedly he turned his back on. I mean, how are you going to go over to the Roman side? We over here fighting, trying to get free of these people. And now you watch them sack the temple and you're like, I'm with y'all. Traitor. He goes over to the Roman side. And now he's writing the history for the Romans. So whenever we read Josephus, that's what we're reading in the first century. We also read that Josephus, Paul, Titus, Dorcas, all of these first century people, they're all in the Bible. Paul wrote about them. These are Roman citizens. And these are not just Roman citizens. These are elite Roman citizens, as Paul was. Paul was an elite Roman citizen. Okay, so let me end with this. Paul in one camp, James and Peter in another camp, they were fighting. That's in the Bible. They were fighting because Paul said, we're not going to just keep this Jews. He couldn't have it just be Jews because the Romans weren't going to do all the stuff that the Jewish people were doing. They were not going to be true to the Jewish experience. And Peter and James were Jewish people, just like Jesus. Well, Paul had to reconfigure the whole Christian thing. Paul is really the founder of Christianity, not Jesus. I don't follow Paul. There are a lot of Christians that are Paulians. They're not Christians. They're Paulians. They follow Paul. And Paul, if you study him closely, you study Jesus closely, you're like, these two people are not saying the same thing. I'll talk about that in another conversation. Right now, I'm giving you the current crisis of faith that I'm experiencing, and maybe this is causing you to recast thoughts and rethink about things and study more. That's all it's an invitation to, right? Because we're supposed to evolve. We're supposed to be open. We're supposed to learn new things and grow and prosper. Okay, so let's end with this. When did the cross come in, right? Women seem to be left out of the Bible. That's yes, he was the first casualty of the war, is the truth. Yes. Rachel, women seem to be left out of the Bible. Very interesting. I've got so much to say about women in the Bible. Wow, I've got from Asherah to Ishtar to Astarte, they're all in the Bible. I can show them to you. And they were being worshiped in the Bible. And Jeremiah was telling these women that they need to stop worshiping the Queen of Heaven because that's why we're in a problem situation. And the women mob him and tell him, shut up, because we stopped worshiping the Queen of Heaven. That's when we got into all the horrors. We're not listening to you. Now, kick rocks, Jeremiah. And Jeremiah kicked rocks because them women, they weren't hearing it. They were like, we worship the Queen of Heaven. Who's the Queen of Heaven? Ishtar, Inanna, Astarte. She's in the Bible. Okay. So let's go back to, so are the words of Jesus true? That's such a good question, Celine. That's where my crisis of faith is, because I always had a soft spot in my heart for the Gospels. Now coming to evidential proof that the Gospels were co opted by the Roman government and probably sponsored. It's probably a state sponsored document by the Roman government, which shouldn't be surprising considering the Roman Catholic Church. Um, I've got to really recalibrate. So I'm going to dive deeper into the Gnostic Gospels. I'm going to dive deeper into the Non Commodity Library. I'm going to dive deeper into the Pseudepigrapha and the Apocrypha. And I'm going to come back to you and let you know what I found. And you let me know what you find too. And we'll have this continual conversation because it's shocking. It is shocking. What if the whole New Testament is just a piece of Roman propaganda? That's where I am. Like, what if the whole New Testament is Roman propaganda? Come on, Paula. It's definitely a witch, right? Jesus, Yeshua was a straight up witch, and that's my savior. Come on. That's the same way I view Jesus as a sorcerer, the same way the Jewish people viewed him as a sorcerer, a magic worker, a magician. They call it the Anshe Ma'aset. If you look on the Christian Witches TikTok, I explain all this. Let me pull up the Christian Witches TikTok for you. And if you look at the Christian Witches TikTok here, this is what it looks like. Go to Christian Witches. There's only one account. There are people that try to, imitate Christian Witches. Yet there's only one, and it says we never DM for readings. But anyway, on the Christian Witches TikTok, I share with you a series I did about the Anshe Ma'aset. These are people who are trained in the high magical arts, mysticism, could do things like bring down rain from heaven and change and use the elements and heal people. And they could do a lot of things. These are Jewish mystics. I think they were the forefathers of the great Kabbalists. Okay. Aurora Day, total Roman propaganda. I think that's what you have in the very sanitized Bible version that they give you definitely in the Catholic Church. And the Protestant Reformation, Protestants, all the Baptists, all the evangelists, all these different people, they are babies of the Catholic Church. They were born out of the Catholic Church and in rebellion of the Catholic Church. This all makes a lot of sense. I gotta tell you, it is really time to practice magic. I know that's right. Okay, so let's end with this, the cross. When did the cross come to be the Christian symbol? Not until hundreds of years after Christ, hundreds of years. In the time of Constantine, as someone mentioned earlier, what happened? How did we get the cross? Constantine, we know he was an emperor, also a Roman emperor, right? He had this great epiphany where they were going to war and he saw Christ and Christ said you were going to be able to win. And then he turned around to being a Christian. It was so amazing. And then Constantine's mother, it wasn't even Constantine who said, hey guys, let's use the cross. It wasn't Constantine. It was his mother. His mother took a trek, like a pilgrimage to the Holy Land, and went to Jerusalem and supposedly found the actual cross that Jesus was crucified on. I don't know how they came. The Roman Catholic Church, they have a lot of amazing, uh, what do they call those things? The relics. Oh, they love the relics. Watch the Netflix show that's on right now. Has anyone seen that Netflix show that's on right now that talks about the relics? It's fascinating. It's amazing. I actually love it because I do know relics hold power. So I actually love it. Anyway, and look, anything can be a relic as long as you put your energy into it. The thing all of a sudden becomes an amulet. How is it that witches can take something like a crystal, a piece of wood, shape it into something, runes, anything? We can take anything and we can imbue energy into it. That thing can become an amulet and protect you from it. That thing can become a symbol. What is a sigil? We made it and then we imbued it with energy. So, of course, I believe in relics because so many people imbue energy into this relic. Of course, this relic has got energy emanating from it. Okay, so anyway, Constantine's mother went on a pilgrimage to the holy city. She found the actual cross that Jesus was crucified on, and she came back and said, "Hey guys, it's a cross from now on. Forget about all that fish and the dolphin stuff. Forget about it. It's the cross." And that's when Christians took on the cross about 400 years after Jesus. Not quite 400 years after Jesus, maybe 300 and change after Jesus is when Christians took on the cross. I mean, wow, family. Just can you see why I'm here like, where do we go from here? And I talk to Christ in here all the time. I want to know, Christ, what can we look at in this world that really came from you? That's what I want to know. And trust me, I'm going to find out. All right. What about the Gospel of Thomas and other missing books? I love the Gospel of Thomas. I do get the sense that the Gospel of Thomas more gives you the true, actual teachings and words of Christ. Because when I read the Gospel of Thomas, it is very much the same vibration as when I'm talking to Christ. It's very similar. I'm glad I found your channel. It resonates questioning things. Oh my goodness, Rachel, do we question a lot of things around here? And of course, just don't believe hook, line, and sinker everything that they gave you in church, because church is giving us, a story. It's a wonderful mythology and it helps people. If church helped lift people out of depression and sadness and fighting with their spouse and thieving and all of that, great. I'm all for that. Yet church is not going to give you the ultimate answers. It just is not. That's right. You know about Saint Helen, that's right. She became a saint, Constantine's mother. They made her a saint for finding the original uh, cross, and then they built a church there. It's the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Sepulchre. How do you say that word? Sepulchre. Church of the Holy Sepulchre or Sepulchre. It's there right now, built on the spot where she found the cross. Meanwhile, why was the dolphin used? Because Christ is another version of Apollo, very similar. And the dolphin was Apollo's animal. And supposedly Apollo morphed himself into a dolphin. The dolphin was sacred to Apollo. Just put that in your pipe and smoke it. Just like, wow. Well, we didn't know that there was a connection. Of course, Greek mythology would be in the Bible because the Bible was written in Greek. Put the puzzle pieces together, family. Someone is going to help me pronounce this. Sepulchre. Thank you. Sepulchre. Sepulchre. Thank you. I needed help with that word. Jesus was connected to the mind of God and knew him as all of creation, as us living in him and his kingdom in us as our soul, the Holy Spirit. Yes, it's beautiful. It is beautiful. So family, thank you so much. I'm going to show you the book one last time before we close up. And I'm going to put the link in the chat. Get this book. Get this book. Creating Christ. I'm going to get my Amazon affiliate links. I don't know why, for some reason, it's not letting me do the link in this second. Let me see if it'll let me do the link. Okay, I have the link in the description below this vid. So look in the description box below this vid and get the link and read the book, and then come back to this video and comment on it, because I am very interested in hearing your conversation about this. And I'm very interested in our rising up and our wisdom as a community, as a global Christian witches community around the world. We get to be very well read, very well studied. We research. We don't simply go on hearsay or just, smoke and miss. I like evidence. And this book is full of evidence, and it's damning evidence. And it's the same evidence that's in the Bible, and it connects a lot of dots. So y'all let me know your thoughts. Okay. Sepulcher. Thank you, Danielle. Sepulcher. 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 Thank you so much for that. So the Egyptian gods were legit. Absolutely, the Egyptian gods were legit. And they're actually in the Bible. And I'll tell you that story in another Witchy Wednesday conversation. I love you, family. Have a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful Witchy Wednesday. I thank you so much for being here and us doing this together. I love you. I'm so thankful for y'all. Have a beautiful Thanksgiving. Bless you, bless your family, bless everyone associated with you. And we'll see you on another Witchy Wednesday. Mwah. Peace. ChristianWitches.com. Peace and love.